But anyways, many of our work group or one of our documents that a work group wrote multiple times that they were wondering for what purpose would Commerce use this information. And just kind of as a reminder to the group, we are compiling the new survey under section 3V, which we'll look at here in a minute. And then we are going to be making a report to the legislature at the end of this year. And this will be the first report. It's a biennial report. And so we'll be doing a fair amount of explaining about where utilities have been with their energy assistance programs to date, where they're at now, and be looking at the policy options that are listed in section 6 of the statute to kind of get a glimpse into where we might be going, and any other recommendations that this group or the broader stakeholder group that will be convening later this summer has in mind. So with that, I think I'll launch into our survey that we're going to look at today. And again, my idea was that we would break out into groups, but if we got a pretty small cohort, I feel like we can all work through this together. So let me share my screen. I hope everybody got this document last night. And so just as a quick reminder here, what we're required to do under the statute is have the utilities disclose the following information: the amount and type of energy assistance and the number and type of households, if applicable, served for programs administered by the utility. So the amount and type of energy assistance and household information. So then under section 2, there's the amount of money passed through to third parties that administer energy assistance programs. So we're going to have to capture that in a separate bucket. And then third is subject to availability, any other information related to the utilities low income assistance programs as requested by the department. So that's fairly open-ended, but I'm looking for your guys' advice as to how we tailor that, any requests under that bucket. And then finally, subsection C states that the utilities must provide this information for their most recent completed budget period, which I'm guessing is 2021. And I'm not sure if utility budgets align with our regular calendar. If not, let me know. And then that information must be submitted in a form, timeline, and manner as prescribed by the department. So at the end of the day, I'm going to be particularly leaning on our utilities to let me know what is a reasonable timeline to ask for this information. Again, we have a report that we're hoping to submit to the legislature before session. That kind of backs us up to October, so that we can do all our internal processing of the final report. So we need to be kind of closing in on that final report in September. The earlier we have this information, the earlier Commerce can process it, share it with stakeholders before it goes in the final report. And July to June is the regular budget year for the state. Ask Sean, and yes, that is correct.
Yeah, and Austin, just a quick note there. You know, a number of the investor-owned utility programs align with the LIHEAP year in terms of contracting and budgeting. I believe many utilities, however, are on the calendar year budget. Can't say that for sure, but that's some of the details there that I'm aware of.
Yeah, for us at Avista, our
Mhm.
program budget aligns with the LIHEAP budget, which is October through September.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. PSE as well. Everything else is on a calendar year, except for energy assistance right now.
And so you guys have just off the top of your head, this a recommendation for how we have folks report this information.
Austin, I'm sorry, but when you were talking, when you look away, I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Um, what do you have a recommendation based on what we talked about at the moment for how the period which we asked for this information is?
Austin, a lot of the reports that are done are come out sort of on the calendar year look back, though, you know, the actual operations are often October through September. So I think the July through June is probably going to be the most challenging time frame to work with. Probably one of the easier reporting periods would be the calendar year. That's just a couple of thoughts from me anyway.
Yeah, for us, our tariff-based program, along with LIHEAP, we report on that, you know, October through September. The only one that we report for the July through June is the donation-based program.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have something similar with our Warm Home Fund with the Salvation Army, the different different time frame than our PSE help. So we currently, because the clock starts and the money starts on October 1st, our current annual report that we do it around May, but it's for October to September of the prior program year, October 1st through September 30th. So I don't know if that complicates it. It would be, I mean, we could report any time period, but it wouldn't reflect the spending for any given program year. And I'm not sure how important that is, but like all of our administrative costs and what we budget and spend is all in that October to September.
Well, let's return to this near the end of the call if we have time.
Yeah, Austin, I'm having really a hard time hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me better now if I speak louder, or is it my mic?
That's a little better.
It's a little better, but it is hard. I think it might be your mic.
Okay. So I'll fix that. Let me get you guys started though, if you can hear me well enough to do that. So we're going to skip over the first few slides here. In the first section, I don't know. We still kind of got a small group here. I don't think we've added anyone. So the first set of questions here that I have in the survey regards the program and program type. And so the utility is going to report, you know, their name here, the program name, the fuel type, and then the assistance category. And the assistance categories that I've provided are these three, if you can read them. Bill assistance, energy efficiency, and arrearage forgiveness. That's the three categories. And my question to the group is, are we missing anything from those three overarching categories? And I'll let the group discuss, and I'll call in with my phone.
Hey, Austin, this is John from Tacoma. I'm sorry to be late.
Hey, John.
The challenge we're going to run into with arrearage forgiveness, there is no such thing on the municipal utility. We can't forgive. So we are looking at arrearage payment or arrearage management, something to that degree as we're doing payment plans. So I wouldn't call that forgiveness. maybe arrearage payment plans or something could be used as a option.
And maybe arrearage management.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Or I think arrearage assistance would be one up from that, because, you know, you have the pay plans, but then, you know, at our company, we have arrearage management, we have arrearage forgiveness, you know, along with any pay plans that we have. So maybe arrearage programs would be like an overall umbrella.
Yeah, I like that, because we'll be similar. We don't have our arrearage management plan yet. It's on the roadmap. But we do have all the different payment plans that would fall into that as well. Well, and then of course, all the COVID stuff. I don't know if that would fall into this, because that's definitely arrearage forgiveness for this last program year.
That's such a good point. You know, we just don't know what the future holds for us in these miscellaneous programs. We could never anticipated COVID, so maybe something for miscellaneous.
Ooh, now we can't hear you at all, Austin.
How about now?
There.
Can you hear me better now?
Yep. I can anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And well, thanks everybody I was listening as I typed in my phone everyone's thoughts on this category. I hear John on the arrearage forgiveness, and I'm quickly coming up to speed about how these programs work. And so I appreciate everybody helping me out here. I think what I want to capture in this category. So first of all, I may have forgot to mention this, but in the past we have allowed folks to report both low-income energy assistance programs and then other programs or all their programs that go to all of their customers if they wanted to provide that information. In this survey for this year, I'm going to limit that to just the low-income programs. And if you have a program that's for everyone, but you can identify what goes to low-income customers. The last few times we've reported, we've gotten a whole slew of responses for programs that aren't low-income. And sometimes that has really complicated the data aggregation and made it difficult for folks to actually provide the correct information for compliance purposes. So I want to limit this area here. And then the second thing on the arrearage forgiveness component, I want to make sure that we are capturing only, because as we go through this workbook, the reason I put it here is because I want to reflect the distribution of funds to low-income customers. And so to the extent that an arrearage management program restructures or simply restructures someone's payments, but doesn't reflect any sort of funds being transferred to that household in the form of forgiveness, I'm not, I do not want to encourage that being reported on this form. So with that change, your concern about this term, John, and for the rest of the group, how does that information help inform what we call that category?
Austin, this is Sean with the Energy Project. So I'm unaware of any actual arrearage forgiveness program that's happening in the state. In every instance, there is an award or a benefit applied to an account that is capped at a specific amount. So there's, yeah, so I guess it's just a terminology here where no, there have been funds applied to accounts that may eliminate an arrearage, but there's no wholesale forgiveness programs of any utility that I'm aware of.
So is there a term that we could use that would kind of get to that, like arrearage benefit? Something more narrow than like arrearage plan,
Arrearage,
unless
yeah,
we're-
arrearage assistance would probably be the most generic term I could think of.
And Anna and Teresa, how do you feel about that?
I would support that. I think that that's fine.
Yeah, I do too. Cause like, I mean, there's, even with the COVID stuff, a lot of people did get their arrearage completely paid off, but to Sean's point, there was a limit. And so it's not true in every case. And then right now for Puget, yeah, there isn't anything else other than a payment arrangement. And I guess to that point, I kind of, and I hope this isn't a dumb question, but so PSE help, for example, a customer can receive PSE help whether or not they have an arrearage at the time that they apply. And if they do, the grant would help with the arrearage, but I'm assuming that we can still leave that in the bill assistance category, because that's really what it's designed for. It's an annual grant to help pay their bill. If they happen to have an arrearage, it would cover it, but we don't focus on that for PSE help.
That is a great, let's return to that one real quick, because I think that falls in our next column and make sure that we can capture that. So in this column D here, not to belabor this column, but we previously had folks reporting for renewable energy programs. Those programs I found are not low-income programs, so I struck renewable energy as an option here. And then the other one that came up was Vista's percent payment plan, which I understand to also be kind of like a bill assistance. And then my not providing an option here for you guys to report that program by keeping the 3 categories with modifications here.
No, I think the bill assistance is sufficient for capturing the PIP. And that was just a pilot that we did. We're like everybody else, we're looking at the bill discount now going forward. And that bill discount will have an arrearage forgiveness component if it's approved. But I think the arrearage assistance is sufficient as an overall umbrella.
Yeah, I would, Austin, this is John. So my thought is, when I think of bill assistance, I'm thinking somebody with their current bill. Arrearage management or assistance is they're behind on their payments. And in this case, arrearage to me is significantly behind on their payments, not like missing one, but something more significant. So I think that arrearage assistance is going to be a really important number to capture. It's a very big number right now, at least for our utility. And I think that's important for the report or whatever, the legislature to understand that these are big numbers.
That sounds good. And that includes the arrearage assistance that you guys are giving the folks, not the total sum of arrearage past due. Is that correct,
Correct.
John?
Yeah, it's the actual assistance. Yep.
I do not have in this report anywhere where the utility can report their total arrearages due. If we want to do that, I'm open to doing that. So let's consider that as we keep going forward.
Yeah, I would think that would be a very important measure to see where utility customers are facing challenges and what the utility is working, and the assistance is really our effort to help get that arrearage down.
And this is Sean, just really briefly here. I think, not to again belabor this too much, the utilities total arrears from 1 day to 300 plus days can be a challenging number to reflect the, I guess, the need. What we've been working with in the regulated utilities that the UTC has been 90-day plus arrearages, just to help set aside the not, I guess, the not chronic under arrears, I guess you could say. So that way we can, some, like, for example, I have a bill due for PSE right now. It may be considered past due, so that it wouldn't be helpful to categorize that with the larger a 90-day plus account. So just a thought there in terms of what's being reported to the legislature in terms of the problem versus just all arrears due.
Okay, that sounds like something that we'd want to define and maybe put in here. I see Steve has his mic off. Steve, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think just echoing some of the other comments made. Do you need arrearage assistance programs identified or detailed if they are not actually reducing energy burden? So if no money is applied to reduce that arrearage, then does the arrearage program you need to capture that information? So if your arrearage management program is basically payment plans, does that need to be captured for this report?
And what I'm thinking is if you're just restructuring the payments, that would not be something that we would report here.
Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, we would agree with that.
And Commerce also, for the benefit here, is currently has the legislature allocated $100 million for to be distributed to the utilities for arrearages, and we'll be collecting a lot of data under that program as well. So I don't view this as being the report for that, but I also think that what everybody's raised here today are good things that we should include here, and that would help us understand where we are as a state in terms of assistance. So I appreciate that, and we'll build that into the report. And that goes for anything else that on arrearages or anything else here in this report we can build on. And so I appreciate your guys' input. So if we select bill assistance here, we had a group last time work on what the categories should be for bill assistance, and as well as what other subcategories might be for these other programs. And my reading of their document was that we shouldn't really get into the weeds on energy assistance, but some of the bill assistance can be broken out different ways that might be useful to understand. And so the categories from their document that I came up with were a rate discount, a monthly deduction or lump sum, percent discount, and emergency assistance as a subcategory here. Now, some of these might be the same, some of them might arguably not fit in the bill assistance category. We might be missing some categories. So I'm turning to this group to help me figure out if we need this column, if and what categories we would use in this column if we chose to keep it. Any initial thoughts here?
Clarification question. So for the percentage discount, does that just mean percentage discount on the entire bill versus the rate discount being just on the KWH rate or what's the difference?
That would be how I would generally think about it, but if it's not self-evident, it's something that we need to figure out. And again, I'm relatively new to these different programs, and so if somebody thinks, well, we don't even run something like that in the state, then I don't feel like we need to include it. Or if this distinction doesn't make sense, you know, let's get rid of the category so we don't have confusion.
I think it could be interesting, you know, because of the variety of programs amongst the utilities to have that distinction. The one thing I'm thinking about, like, is the assumption if you don't identify any of these four, that the program is a grant-based program.
If that's a question for me, what I hope to do with this whole entire report is kind of button it up and lock it down. By the time we finish, and so you would need to submit one of these categories. I guess you could leave it blank, but the idea would be that, my hope would be that we would select a category here. And if we don't feel like we can get a comprehensive list, we could add an other option. They could select other column where they write what that other option was.
Yeah, I think grant, I mean, just a regular grant, cash, you know, needs to be in here.
Yeah, I think we could
Is that what
probably
you
come-
think the lump sum is? I'm sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, I think we could probably come up with in short order here, what would populate this list pretty comprehensively. Because yeah, these four categories there's some overlap. They're not mutually exclusive. So yeah, there's like, you know, having a grant award, having a bill discount, having a rate discount, you know, those are.
And is the bill discount like a set amount or is it a percentage discount?
Yeah, that would be a question.
How would low income conservation programs come in, or energy efficiency programs come in? Would that be under a lump sum, or would that need to be a different category? Thinking about grants.
So right now, these subcategories here for if you select bill assistance is the idea. If we would like to open up a subcategory for energy efficiency, we can do that as well.
Is that already included later in the spreadsheet though?
No.
But Austin, you're saying that columns D and E are dependent. So if the submitter is selected bill assistance in column D, then they'll get the subset, the precise subset of bill assistance subcategories in column E. And if they had selected energy efficiency in column D, they'll get what? Another subset?
That's a good. So right now, as it's structured here, we have the assistance category, and then column E is if the assistance category is bill assistance, what kind of bill assistance is offered? So you would select. We could make it so that if you select energy efficiency, then this column E becomes subcategories. The group that met last time, my understanding of their work was that they thought that selecting energy efficiency alone was sufficient. And so I'll let this group think about that too. And maybe we should stick with, for quickly, just the bill assistance categories and tease that out, and then we can scoot to that question and energy efficiency, if that works.
No, and thanks for that clarification. Yeah, that's helpful.
So we have grants, bill discount, and then we have a question about set or percent, and then we have a rate discount. Sean, are there any other categories that come to mind, or anybody else on the team?
I think with the bill discount, it seemed, yeah, just to get to that point of like, so there's the lump sum discount option, and then there's the percentage discount option. Maybe that would help solidify the distinction between the categories.
So we could have a bill discount in parentheses lump sum, bill discount in parentheses percent discount. Is that
Yes, and then there is also a rate discount, which is,
Mhm.
Yep. And then there is a lump sum grant that's not a discount, it's just a lump sum grant.
So how would you distinguish a rate discount from a percentage discount?
A rate discount would be an actual rate that is applied to, like, for example, Pacific Court has, well, actually that's just changed now to a bill discount, but it would be a rate applied to a specific customer class. So instead of 10 cents a kWh, it would be 5 cents or whatever, versus a percentage applied to the bill, which would be like a flat percentage discount.
Like on a senior disabled or low income disabled, where they might have a 25% or 50%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It would be like a 25% flat discount versus an actual rate that is designed for a customer class.
Great. Okay.
Do you feel good? And then Sean, I took the grant to be the same thing as the lump sum. Is there a different type of grant that we need to?
No,
know?
I think that's I would consider that the same.
Any other thoughts, folks, before we turn to the energy efficiency question? Okay. Energy efficiency. Do we want to have subcategories for energy efficiency? What would be the benefit of doing so?
Well, under CETA, energy assistance includes both bill assistance and energy efficiency. So the benefit would be capturing that assistance. It's been so long since I've spent any time with this document. It's hard to understand where that was going to be captured. I think energy efficiency reporting generally occurs with the investor owns in a separate report. For CETA, however, if this is what's going to be used for the legislature, I do think it would be helpful to tell the whole story if that type of energy assistance, the energy efficiency improvements was captured.
Yeah, so right now we have a category here, and so as the utility fills this out, they'll be able to select what kind of, for each program they have, they'll be able to select if it's an energy efficiency program, if it's a bill assistance program, and then they'll be able to report their spending, et cetera, other metrics. For that think the question before the group is, does it make sense for us to break out energy efficiency into a grant program, into weatherization, to have different subcategories for the category of energy efficiency?
Oh,
And
okay.
the last time that we did this, we had people saying like light bulbs, they're saying weatherization and lumping things all into different categories. And it wasn't clear if it was even useful. So I think the group said that they did not want to do subcategories. But I see Lauren with her hand up. Sorry, Lauren, I just noticed your hand.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Austin. So I agree with Sean. I think it would be good to include energy efficiency in this reporting, but I just want to clarify that we're only talking about low income energy efficiency and not utilities' entire energy efficiency budgets, right?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
what we're hoping to capture here.
And in that case, I do think maybe a little bit more subcategories might be helpful. You know, for example, if a utility is providing, like, you know, some utilities offer like a mobile home replacement program. If they're providing a lot more weatherization, you know, or lighting measure, you know, weatherization versus lighting measures or appliances. I just think it might be interesting to kind of see the trends and how that breaks out among different utility service areas. But I don't want to do that like at the expense of, you know, I don't know if others feel like there's not a lot of value in that information, we can talk about it, but I could see some value to taking to the legislature, like this is where most of the money is going.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. Any thoughts on that? Any other categories if we were going to continue to build on Lauren's list?
Yeah, Austin, this is Sean. I think that she makes a good point there, you know, in terms of like direct install programs. I think, you know, we need to ensure that those are direct installs for low income versus, you know, the entirety of a direct install budget. So, you know, looking at weatherization, and I don't know if, like, when you say you want to lock this down, I don't know if there's, again, like an other category, but, you know, I think it would be good to have a notes section or some place where there can be, you know, for example, if it's a large number for a direct install program, you know, that we'd want to distinguish, like, you know, that those were verified through low income weatherization programming, or to be able to feel confident that the budget reported is tied to directly benefiting a household at or below 80% of AMI or 200% FPL. So however best that can occur, whether it's a drop down or a note section.
Yep,
Yeah,
we can
this
definitely
is
add
Steve.
that.
Yeah, no, I agree with Sean and Lauren on that. Making sure that just what's reported is under low income. Could you just break down the two categories into weatherization and appliances, or weatherization and direct install? Would that be sufficient?
I'll leave that open to the group.
Yeah, I mean, I think those would be helpful. And I think, again, you know, if there is a note section, just to clarify any questions that may come up from the report.
Yeah, and I don't think that data would be too difficult, you know, to distinguish on the programs, just as long as we don't get any more granular than that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too, Steve. This is Lauren.
Would it make sense
All
in
right,
both of these categories? Oh, sorry, Austin. I'm just wondering, would it make
Oh, no.
sense in each of these to have an other category so that, like, and people could fill that in, but we could kind of, you know, catch it over repeated reporting cycles. We could maybe, you know, suss out some additional categories that are either emerging as our programs, you know, kind of diversify, but also maybe we've missed a couple.
Yep, I think that's a great recommendation. We can do that. And I did that for some of these and I didn't do it for others. But I think in general, I'm going to go through this and make sure that any of these where you drop down and have limited options to choose from, that there's always an other category. So that's worthwhile. All right, I feel like we covered the arrearage assistance. And I'm not sure if we really need any more categories for that. Folks have any thoughts on that? All right, let's proceed then with kind of having that column there, defining that, you know, we're looking at 90+ days, arrearages, et cetera. What we talked about earlier. All right, let's move on. Thanks everybody for getting in the weeds on this. It can sometimes seem tedious, but I think it'll be helpful not only for this reporting period, but for reporting periods down the road. So, and I think these are some of the stickiest questions, and the rest of this will go pretty quick. So here we had, in the last report, requested utilities to identify a utility if the program is a utility program, a third-party program, or a hybrid program. And there wasn't much definition around any of those terms. I put together a few definitions here. A utility program is one that is done completely in-house. And again, these are kind of in layman's terms. A third-party program is a program where the utility passes administration of the program in its entirety to a third party. So kind of just funnels the dollars to a CAP agency or other entity. And then a hybrid program is where the utility gives some of the responsibilities of the program to a third party, but retains others. So it might keep some part of the administration in-house or something else. It's not just kind of writing off a check and turning the program over to another entity. In the real world, do these categories make sense? Do they make sense later on as we ask more questions? And I'll tease a few of those right now. You know, who does the utility contract with? If it contracts with a CAP agency, which agencies? And then more into like the contract, does it the contract cover CAP admin expenses, et cetera? So we're trying to get into that, those questions about third-party funding. And Brian has his hand raised. Hi, Brian.
Yes, in column H, in the second, well, actually the third line, CAP agencies, the agencies contract with, can you change the second agencies to utilities? Right there. Yep, you're right on it, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, there's surely to be
Just reads
typo.
better to
I
me, sorry.
appreciate that. No, that is an accurate change. I appreciate that. Thanks, Brian.
And can you go
So does
to
make,
right a little bit more? I just
yeah,
wanted to see some of the other questions on the box, sorry.
yeah. Here. And to understand what parts of the program remain in-house versus being sent over to another entity. And I'm not sure if that's worth teasing out all of these different options here, or if it just makes sense to ask a question about whether low-income verification is done by another entity other than the utility. So what do folks think about these sections as you digest them? And the question of hybrid versus third-party programs versus utility programs. Is this worthwhile?
Yeah, so for L, it looks like your answer is either going to be yes or no, right? Is there interest in like the percentage of the budget that goes towards admin?
There is, and it might not be here. I've got, unfortunately today I'm working with one screen, and so I'm moving my Zoom stuff around so I can see the whole screen here. whether it is here or somewhere else, here, it'll maybe give you a little bit more understanding of where this whole thing goes. There's a whole section on the amount of money passed through to CAP agencies or other third-party energy assistance program administrators. So we do get into questions of, do you provide admin expenses, or do you cover that in the contract with the CAP agency or third party? And then I think this is your question. What is the percent admin provided by the utility to the CAP agencies or other third parties for the total contract?
Can I ask a
CAP
question?
agency then.
Ha-
Yeah.
Okay, so actually two questions. What are we driving at asking these questions, and are these questions required under the law?
So these questions are trying to get at the relationship between the utilities and the CAP agencies and their energy assistance programs. There's an open question, I think, to this group as to whether that's a worthwhile objective to try and understand that in a greater degree or not. And whether that is something that would help the legislature think about low-income energy assistance programs. So that's the broad question. The RCW does require that we figure out how much money is passed to third parties for energy assistance programs. So that's something that we cannot change. So I probably would want to make the distinction between at least a utility program and one that's a program that is just passed through to a CAP agency or other party. Other than that, these questions are just trying to get further into the weeds. And it's not clear to me if that's worthwhile.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I do think the administrative cost component, I don't know how in-depth we have to get in parsing it out, but it is worthwhile to see, especially on the conservation programs, and I guess for the direct assistance programs too, the amount of money that's directly being spent, being able to compare that to energy burden reduction compared to the cost of administering those programs. I do think there's definitely value in understanding that relationship, because you'll find out that there's some programs that are reducing energy burden much more dollar per dollar than others.
It's very true. And also we would need to define administration for them as well. Not everybody defines it the same way.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. We can do that. I think even in this document, we use it a number of different ways, so it'd be good to define that and use it the same way throughout the document. So if folks feel somewhat comfortable with these questions, going back here, does, we got some hand raised. Sorry, I can't see all the time. Lauren and Tor. Lauren, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there a reason that we're singling out the CAP agencies for admin costs? Or, I mean, are we trying to get at some bigger question about what it takes to administer these programs? Because if it's the latter, then I would recommend that we also try to figure out, how much does it cost the utility to administer their own programs if they're doing that, in-house? If there's other third-party administrators that we should be calling out, I would suggest we talk about that too. I don't know. It seemed a little bit like we were calling out the CAP agencies, and I don't think that's the purpose of this.
Yep. There should be a column in here that requires the utility to report their admin, and if there's not, that's an error of omission on my part. So thanks for flagging that. We can double check that. And I think that this here, okay, so here is utility operation and maintenance costs. So I think that would try and capture the total cost for the programs that you're talking about, Lauren. And then I just have a clarifier that this isn't the costs that are the admin costs that the CAP agency or third-party program administrators cover.
I mean, I know,
And the reason
so I see that it broadly says operations and maintenance, but I wonder if this needs to say it and administration. I don't know. It's a question, because I feel like we're talking about administrative funds.
I'm thinking this probably should be administration, and then to Brian's point, we should include that a definition of what that encompasses. Do people feel good about that?
I do. I just have one other question on it, just to make sure we're clear on a hybrid versus a 100% third party, because you mentioned verification of income. So for example, for PSC, that's entirely done by the CAP agencies for PSC help. But there's still an administrative component on the PSC side, because we have to apply the pledges. Would you want both of those things? And because I'm guessing you would, if you're trying to capture the entire cost of the program. It's a much smaller component, but it is still there.
Yeah, so I would, if I were filling this out under that scenario, my logic would be I would select a hybrid program because part of the program is being done outside of the utility, right? I'm guessing that a lot of these are going to be hybrid.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to get clear on. That's where my brain went, is that we still call it hybrid, even though the portion done by PSC is considerably smaller. Then we would get the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. We keep that as a hybrid because PSC holds all of the funds. So, I mean, they just pay for the administration of the program, but they keep all the benefit dollars in-house. So definitely hybrid.
Yep, and we do all the pledge applications in our billing system too, which I'm assuming other utilities do that as well. But yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and the goal would be, if we go back over to this orange section, for you to report here what your costs are here, and if the CAP agency is only doing the verification, then you would put the cost under admin expenses for doing the verification for them that you cover for the CAP agency, or that you pay the CAP agency for.
Right. Yeah, no, they do the bulk of it for us right now, the verification and essentially all the paperwork. So, but I think that makes sense. And what you said, Brian, makes sense.
So I'm going to walk through these really quick, and if people have questions or think we need to dive deeper into any of these categories, let me know, and I'll stop on ones where I have questions. So
Austin?
I'm
Sorry,
yeah.
This is Tor. I just wanted to kind of throw a general question in here that kind of tracks back to conversation we were having a few minutes ago in terms of, is it required by law that we, report on some of these elements? And I do think it would be, important for us to keep in mind that sort of the intent of the, this legislation overall, what we really do, both need and want to, report, but maybe which of these might be able to be relegated to optional reporting status, because they could be valuable internally to the utilities, or, for coordination between utilities as we're kind of ongoing continuous improvement on the way that we're, working toward our CETA goals, but that the reporting burden and or just the very fact of making you know, some of these elements, obligatory reporting, I think can start teaching to the test, if you will, or maybe, you know, create some unintended consequences around program design over time. I'm a little bit worried that, like, you know, if we're super granular in the, you know, the mandatory reporting components of this, that it's going to drive us toward some predetermined way of meeting the CETA, overall CETA goals. This is more of a philosophical kind of question, but you know, as I look through these questions, I think it might be useful to think, okay, which one of these might we be able to say, which ones of these might be more, you know, optional reporting, or you know, taken off the mandatory list.
Yeah, thanks, Tor. And you know, I agree that we should look at these columns and think, gosh, do we really need to report this? And if not, is it useful? Does it help provide context? Or is it not useful, and could we delete it? And so I encourage everyone to look at these columns and think that, and ask those questions. And I can say that in putting this together, myself, I don't have any predetermined thoughts about where this takes us, but I understand that concern, and I've heard that from folks. And the way I've been thinking about it too is that this is just some data. Excuse me, I got a clock that's a train here at my grandmother's house. So but that's, I think, also the work of this group, is to provide context and the help, you know, caution against any sort of predetermined outcomes from this work, and lay that out before the legislature in the report. And so even if we're able to collect data of one particular thing and not others, I think it's important that that we try and collect the data that we might need. Sean.
Yeah, just a quick thought here. So, you know, I know in terms of the commerce managed dollars for low income weatherization, you know, that is reported back up to the legislature. And so, you know, there's, I think, regular and keen interest in how those funds are spent. I think there's value in being able to collect, where feasible, how those state investments are or are not being leveraged by utilities. And I think at the core of that is how utilities decide to implement their programs, whether, you know, directly or in collaboration with programs utilizing state dollars. And so I think while the legislation, you know, requires that utilities demonstrate progress toward, you know, meeting the goals, and that there is a level of reporting here, I do think that retaining the these questions would be helpful in answering some questions that I would anticipate that the legislature would have about how these funds are not leveraging other state investments. You know, whether or not they're mandatory for completion, you know, I certainly would just leave that up to Commerce to decide.
And yeah, and I welcome that those questions. If we think something should be listed as optional, I'm much more in favor of making everything mandatory, so folks don't get confused about what's mandatory and what's optional. And in doing so, I'm concerned about asking too much from the utilities and making it too burdensome, too long. And so making them yes/no questions is helpful. So like this one here is, who does the utility contract with? The CAP agency, consultant, or other nonprofit or government. And this is another category where there could be an other added, and then have a column that allows folks to elaborate, but allows folks to click through relatively quickly here. One of those questions that isn't, that seems like it could be rather long is this one. Do we need to know what CAP agencies the utilities are really contracting with, or the third parties that the utility is contracting with, so long as we know, in general, that if they're contracting with someone? Any thoughts on those categories? Because these ones are ones that I would consider getting rid of.
Just really briefly here, Austin. So, a third party would be, even I think a utility delivered program often relies upon contracting out work. So long as it's clear that, even a utility implemented program may utilize third parties. So, I haven't gone through this language specifically, but a yes, no would be helpful here. Yeah, I think I may just need to take that back, but I think there's the hybrid approach may be often the standard approach in terms of utilities contracting out work, unless the utilities have on staff HVAC contractors, electricians, doing that work. Generally, that's going to be contracted out.
And how do our utilities feel about reporting, the particular CAP agencies? Is that something that really matters or not to this work? Would that be overly burdensome?
I think it would probably be overly burdensome. I'm thinking about first year reporting, and I like the option, having an optional section that maybe we could implement in year 2 or year 3. But the first year reporting should just, in my opinion, and believe me, we don't have to listen to my opinion, should just be what is required by law as a starting point, as a solid baseline. And then anything we add, such as, well, what third-party vendors are you using, or what caps are you using, could be an optional question, or something that could be implemented as mandatory a year out. Just a thought.
Thanks, Brian. Well, I'm considering getting rid of H. So, I might keep I because it might be helpful to understand a little bit more detail of what third-party organization and the utilities are working with, because it might be an alternate model that, I could see someone asking, well, who are those third parties? And we've got some subcategories, which I showed you. But it might be good to break that out further. So I'll keep thinking about that. If folks have thoughts later on, let me know. Let's finish this section and then we'll take a break. Do we want to know what services the third party provides for the utility? If so, are some of those more important for us to identify than others? What are folks' thoughts on that?
Just thinking about the earlier comment, and thinking about college PhDs programs, there are a couple programs that we, administer in-house, but we still have CAP do the income verification because it just makes much more sense, given that they work with their clients on these matters anyway. So even though it's kind of a small part in order to gain entry into, let's say, the senior disabled discount rates, we would say that we're administering them in-house, but yet we're still contracting out. So does that make that in-house program a third-party program?
Yes, that would be my thought. By the definitions we laid out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Earlier.
I meant a hybrid program.
Yes, it would be a hybrid program. If you were doing any sort of work with another entity. And so my guess is we're going to have very few, if any, utility programs because I think my understanding is that almost everybody, if not everybody, does the income verification outside of the utility.
So is that helpful information then? Because, I think about, we look at LIHEAP being administered through CAP as definitely a third-party program. Our Warm Neighbor program, we would consider in-house, even though we have CAP do the income verification. And I could see definitely a hybrid being the discounted rate program. But yeah, under this scenario, it would seem that the in-house programs that a lot of utilities are probably doing would all be considered hybrid. And so I don't know if you're getting the distinguished information that you need.
So Steve and Austin, this is John from Tacoma. So Tacoma does its own low income certification. And I'm not sure I don't think we're the only utility that does that. So I think the concept of the hybrid program or how it's reported and what services that the third party provides is fine. I don't think we should lump everything in with just the CAP agency reporting. Okay, I really think it needs to be separated out. Each utility is unique and different.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So would we have them report these different categories then, or have them figure out what services they send out of house, or do you think we should just nix that column? Is that not useful? And then similarly, K here is what do you keep in-house?
You're saying dropping both J and K?
Yeah, what are folks' thoughts?
Well, if we're dropping J and K, then can't we drop anything that refers to third party or hybrid program if we're not asking what it is? Because if I heard right from John, he said that Tacoma does their own income verification. And so that would be a completely internal program. But if they have a CAP on the outside, do income verification for like discount program, then that's a hybrid. I mean, I could see where this could get very muddled very quickly.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if that's valuable information or consistent information for a data report.
Half-baked idea here. If we listed out sort of the program components per program, and then for each one identified whether it was conducted in-house or outside, would that maybe is that too much to ask? But it feels like a cleaner way of sort of getting at some, if we're looking to get at some trending information. 90+% of us contract out income eligibility verification, but only 10% of us, conduct X, Y, and Z out of house. That useful?
I think that's the idea. If we can discern those different parts of the program, and we can have another category as well. Do folks want to take a shot at that? What those might be? I have like energy audits, income eligibility verification, and then I have just other services, which is your other category.
Seems like measure installation would be one. Outreach and recruitment, or whatever you call it.
Mhm. Yeah, those are good.
Any other categories, group? All right, well, maybe we stick with those.
Yeah, those are good.
I assume outreach is the same as marketing or whatever.
Okay. And then we just copy these over here, and we'll have a multi-list drop down. People can select and then move on. We'll add 2 columns for other. I think this is a redundant question from later on. So, and then I have a question here about how often does the utility ask for reports about the program from CAP agencies or other third parties? And there's a drop down here that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, or never. I don't know if it's weekly. Seems like nobody would do that, but I'm not sure. Any thoughts on this column or the options you can select here? Maybe
think you
there's
can
a
drop
note
it.
section.
Yeah, I think you could drop the weekly. That would be my thought. The other ones are all possible options. Hopefully the never is never.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a hang up for me because we asked for a variety of reports. So like we're asking for monthly demographic reports, and then we asked for quarterly admin reports, and then annual conservation education reports. So it kind of works me into a corner a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of on that point too. I mean, we don't do it right now, but I could imagine a state in the future where basically, we've got access to a Tableau dashboard or some sort of ongoing real-time info that we'd be able to check on that would neatly fit into a kind of cadence-based reporting element listed here either.
Yeah, that's good. Thoughts? I'm gonna have to think a little bit more, Anna, about your scenario, and how we work around that. I would like something on frequency, but I don't want folks, maybe it's maybe it's a question about your most frequent report. So in that case, it would be monthly. Is that at all helpful?
I guess I just kind of wonder about the significance of the reports to the overall effect on the population. So like that would be a demographic report, but the annual report, we compile that for the annual report. So I guess that's what I'm just kind of stuck on is like frequency doesn't totally equal importance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like on demonstrating program performance.
Mhm.
I would agree with Anna. Also, what type of reporting are you receiving? I mean, you're asking about households served. Well, in weatherization, they give you a household and maybe one name and maybe the number of people in the household. Where if you go to a LIHEAP energy assistance report, you have the demographic information of everybody in the household. So quality of the report, quality of the information, what are you looking for? I mean, because somebody gets a printout says, yes, I served 10 households and we spent $10,000. Okay, it really could be that simple, but on the other hand, it could get much more involved with a lot more information. So I don't know if you want to go deeper into reporting or not.
My initial thought is not to want to go a lot deeper on this question. I think for me, the importance of it was, how frequently across our utilities are they generally receiving reports? And from these entities. And one thing that we will talk about is trying to categorize utilities into different groups. And I'm more interested in if one group of utilities is receiving generally information at a faster clip than others. That's kind of my thought behind this question. And perhaps we just nix the question altogether.
I was just kind of, it's how often does the utility ask for reports? And I mean, our utilities can ask for reports whenever they want. I mean, if something's coming up and there's a presentation, they could ask for a report. Or is this more of a question of along our board? You know, we have to report to our board annually or biannually, and we do federal reporting at Commerce on a set schedule, that type of thing. I mean, what kind of reports are we asking for? Ad hoc, just in general, or program specific?
Yeah, I think the question about is it an ask or is it a receive? I'll noodle on these. I appreciate everybody asking me having these good questions. Why don't we all take a 10-minute break, come back at 10:30, and then we will try and scoot along on these questions. The next group here are rather straightforward, and I'm not too concerned about their questions we asked the first time we did this survey back in 2019. So we will scoot through those and then move on to the zip code data and then some of the other smaller sections of the survey. So let's all get back together at 10:30, and I'll see you then. right, well, we got about a minute for we'll end our break and get going again. I think we're right on schedule. Again, my apologies. The idea was for us to do breakout groups today, but I think we got a rather small crew given people being sick and people being out of the office, which might happen a fair amount since we're doing these meetings and the stakeholder meetings over the summer. People want to go on vacation and enjoy, so we're kind of stuck with me in this big group today. But I think we're making a lot of good progress, and sometimes these things seem tedious, but it'll really help us in aggregating this data going forward. So does anyone have any kind of big overarching questions that still linger in their head as they go through this survey as a whole? I see some things in the chat. I'm not so good here. Okay, I see. Heather wrote, I'm not sure if the which agency question is helpful in evaluating how well energy burden is being addressed. Heather, do you want to speak to that, or maybe we touched on that? Looks like this was a while ago. My apologies. It's hard to share the screen and view the chat at the same time. If not, let's just keep going. So next few sections here, we've kind of already talked about a little bit. This one is from last year's survey, or I mean the survey in 2019. It's about funding sources. So we identified federal, LIHEAP for LIHEAP, utilities, BPA, energy efficiency incentive, commerce, ratepayer donations, and other. I feel comfortable with these categories. If anybody has any other categories they'd like to suggest, give a moment to do so, and then we'll scoot on. Okay. This one goes back to our questions about expenditures and administration costs. We talked about this one, I think, at fairly great length. We didn't dive into each one of these questions. And I'll admit, I don't think the questions here are worded particularly well. So I will spend some time working on those. But the gist of this is the utility reports their direct spending that goes to low-income households and their admin costs. And they also report on what they give to the CAP agency to distribute and what their admin costs are. There's some yes/no questions in here to get at these, and kind of, again, if you answer no, then you're not obligated to answer the second question. I'm not sure how many folks will be able to parse these different expenditures out and admin costs. And if you can't, then you just click no and you move on. So there's a fair amount of that in this survey. So there are no questions about that general concept or the questions here. Again, I think they need to be worded better, but that's the intent. All right. So here, this is copied over and then modified from the last survey. Well, thanks, Brian, for jumping on with us. I appreciate it. I see you're jumping off. So here we have, this should be not program qualifications. Oops, sorry, folks. This should be income qualifications for the program. And you will see here, the idea was that folks had one column to report this in the last survey. And what they did was they would report, okay, I've got, 200% FPL, but we also do, I don't know, 90% AMI. And the 90% AMI is tiered as, with 4 tiers or what have you. And then they put all that information into one column, which is not impossible, but it's difficult to use. So the idea here is that, say your program just runs 200% FPL, you would put 200% here in tier 1, because that's the first tier and it's the only tier. And then you would select FPL here. Then if you had an other income level qualification for the program, you would detail that in this. I've given some brief instructions here on how to do that. At the top, so if the utility does not offer a tiered income level requirement, simply put the income level requirement in the tier 1 column and select the appropriate metric, FPL, AMI, or SI. If the utility uses one or more income metrics, please provide the additional metrics in columns AG through AK as applicable. So these columns here. Does this seem workable for folks? It might not be the most intuitive. Maybe there's a more intuitive way of doing it. I'm open to suggestions. Again, FPL, AMI, and SMI are the only metrics I know that people have reported in the past, but perhaps there's some other income level metric folks use.
So Austin, can you hear me? This is Steve.
I can hear you, Steve.
Okay. So like an example here, would it be on our discount rate programs, depending upon your income level? So let's say if you're 100% of, you're 125 of FPL or below, you're going to get a 25% discount. But if you are 175 of FPL down to 125, then you get a 15% discount. Is that, and would you report those two? You'd report like the first part in AB and the second part would be in column AG. Would that be an example of how you would use this?
Yeah, but I think your example raises a problem, which is there's no real place if I, button these down, there's no place for you to report kind of what the differences in the benefits offered under the different tiers, right? You would just be saying 125% under this column, 200% under this column, and we wouldn't know the difference for the customer between those tiers with the columns that we have here. Does that make sense?
That does. So what would be a good example of how you would break things apart here then, if you were to use both column AB and column AG?
So I think you would report. So it's like you had that one where it was 125%. This is like 125%. This is 200. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. These are the different tiers of the program. But I think what we need is maybe it's another column for the benefit to the customer. Like what is the discount rate for that customer at 200% FPL, or for those customers that are at that level, right?
Okay, and then the other income level qualification then under like AG would be if you're measuring the program with AMI.
That's what I'm thinking.
This would be. This would be
because we have some that are both. So we have some that were 200% of FPL or 80% of AMI, whichever is greater. So that's what you would want us to put in AB and AG, right, Austin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's correct. And the question is, how do we, I guess the question for the group would be, So we understand it's a tiered program. We should probably understand what those different tiers offer the customers, is what I'm hearing and what I'm just naturally think. So I don't want to take our time now to think about how we capture that. I can work to do that. I can circulate a draft around the folks if they'd like to take a shot at it, or take a look at what I did. And I think Tor just raised his hand. Tor, do you have a idea?
I did, but that's when you were as you were speaking to say, let's table that and you'll come back to us with a response. Because yeah, I was thinking like it should probably map all the way back to the, program name, maybe even, and maybe we disaggregate the program into, utility discount program tier 1, utility discount program tier 2, and then, have maybe two separate rows for one program, or I don't know, something along those lines. And then you could map the qualifications in the income section back to those. But you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it raises questions about the other columns. And the idea for this sheet is to have one row per program to try and minimize people's work and to aggregate it. But yeah, I definitely need to go back and think about how the other parts of this interact. So I appreciate everybody raising these questions. So I will do that and get back with you all about that.
Yeah. Oh, and I would hope that we're just basically reporting one assistance number for a program, even if it has tiers, and not have to break down the amount of money spent on each tier.
Yeah. I don't want to do that to folks. I agree. I don't think that would be useful at an aggregate level. So this column here is about program eligibility and qualifications. We asked similar questions in the last survey in 2019. I think this is the last time we have to do the exercise of thinking, have we captured everything here? And so what I did is I went through and tried to summarize and standardize a few of these. If there's a better way of saying something, if there's a category you think we shouldn't be having, or if you think we're missing something, let's know. So let's go through this really quick. So first, there's a question if it's available to all low-income customers or not, or if there are additional requirements. So if it was just for all customers, you hit yes, and you want to ask fill any of this out. Because there would be no other eligibility. But if there are other eligibility requirements, the idea is you'd select from a list of which ones the program has. So for eligibility requirements, we have age, disability, housing type, senior, active military status, veteran status, energy burden, fuel type, length of occupancy, meter type, household size, no past due balance, high energy use, children in the household, race or ethnicity, and other. Do any of those seem like something that we probably shouldn't include? I'm guessing we should include them maybe. The one I think about is meter type. I'm not sure how useful that is for energy assistance programs for low-income customers. And then are we missing anything from this list?
You say no past due balance. What about the programs that do require a past due balance, like the other way around?
If those, by your suggestion, they're like an arrearage program, let's create a category for that.
Yeah, I think
That's
so. And I'm
useful.
thinking of our warm home fund, a customer has to be past due to get that assistance. So I don't know if others have it, but it's just a thought.
So
Agreed.
Austin, this is John from Tacoma. Quick question. If there are multiple categories in here, is it like a checkbox? You pick the ones that those requirements are, or are they unique for each one?
It'll be, the idea is that if you have a program, a income energy assistance program, and it has an age and disability eligibility requirements for it, you'd be able to select age and disability, and it would populate the box with those two, and then you'd move on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've not built this out. This is just kind of our draft version.
Austin, Tor Peterson here. Yeah, I agree with your questions around the meter type. I mean, on a practical level, what we bump into, not infrequently at City Light is our utility discount program is, you have to be a residential account holder. But we've got live work units with that, in which income qualified folks are living, but they have a small business or, small to medium commercial meter attached to that dwelling. So they are not eligible for our program. So we know that we've got income burdened, customers out there that are ineligible for our program based on those rules. So I don't know if meter type should live in this category, but it is a challenge that we face. And maybe a similar, like goes without saying element is that, the applicant needs to be the primary account holder in the household. So those are two that maybe don't feel like they need to be on this list, but do have programmatic implementation implications.
So take it off the list, but maybe it's, maybe or maybe not, it rises to the level of putting it in the report as a barrier for folks.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. We can come back to that one if people have thoughts later, or let's just keep moving. So then there's a similar question about prioritization and whether there are any qualifications used to determine priority for the program. And again, I took the list that we had last time: age, disability, housing type, senior, energy burden, serious illness, household size, high energy use, children in the household, race or ethnicity. I could see based on our last column that maybe we have the amount, maybe utilities prioritize those with the greatest arrearage amount, or past due balance. I'm not sure if that's a category worth pursuing, or if there are other categories worth pursuing. What's everybody's thoughts?
So this is John from Tacoma. My thought on this one is it's really kind of a first come, first serve, as funds are available until they're exhausted in many cases. So there really isn't a priority setting of A versus B or C. It's more as, do you qualify? Are there funds available? And you have made the, met all the eligibility requirements.
Is that is that align with everybody else's understanding in the state? And if so, I think it would be good that we maybe even ask a clarifying question about whether the utility, maybe the question is, does the utility offer, does the utility prioritize certain customers for its programs or not? And that would be a yes or no question.
Yeah, I think the
And then if
challenge
so-
is, you addressed those with the highest burden and the lowest income based by program design. You know, it's
Mm.
not that we can control how people come in the door, but we have,
Mhm.
you know, like LIHEAP considers household income, number of people in the house, the annual heat cost, you know, and so, you know, when you see a higher benefit, like $998, you know, the cap is $1,000, but you know, if you see somebody with 998, that's your lowest income with the highest energy burden. So by design, that's how you address helping the lowest income with the highest burden.
And Anna, is that, so, you know, if somebody walked in and had that, had a higher energy burden, et cetera, like they would go to the top of the list of people to be served? And is that built into the program, or is that
No,
like the
no,
program
no,
thinking?
no.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not done that way. Actually, the people who are prioritized are those who are in jeopardy of disconnection.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's who's prioritized.
That's a good
So
point.
keeping services connected.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I think maybe we need to unpack the like definition or kind of practice of prioritization as it's embedded in the statement here. Because yeah, same with Anna. I mean, you know, and to say that we prioritize folks at risk of disconnect is actually what we do is put a hold on their account so it won't be disconnected. They aren't actually processed any more quickly or put to the top of the list for verification, but we, you know, have the release valve of putting a hold on their account. So is that prioritizing if we're not actually getting them, you know, the service more quickly, but we are avoiding the risk of disconnect for them? So that'd be one thought I have with this. Yeah, I think a lot of the ways we quote prioritize are probably through those programmatic means that Anna's mentioning. So, you know, we've had targeted communications, you know, marketing campaigns via ethnic media to the, you know, members of the community that we can see in our data are underrepresented in the program. That doesn't process them more quickly, but it does maybe lower the barrier of entry to the program around the issue of knowledge that the program even exists. Same thing with lowering the language barrier via application materials that are in, you know, that have been properly translated into the top tier languages. So, so yeah, I think one other maybe category that I would put in this list that we're, you know, working on and haven't executed yet is identifying priority geographic areas based on underinvestment or historically underserved communities. Again, like the way those folks will be prioritized will most likely be through, you know, enhanced communications and marketing campaigns than it would be by putting them to the top of, say, a processing list, if that's what we're meaning by priority here.
So what I'm thinking about this column and from the conversation we're having right now is that this is a conversation that's not, you know, the data that we kind of know what the data is going to tell us at this point for the state. It's not a real, it just gets more, the question gets into a lot of muddy topics that we won't get we won't get good data for this, I guess is the bottom line. And that this is a conversation we can have and talk about more in section 6, which calls for us to, you know, look at ways to prioritize low income, high energy burden customers. Does that sound good? Does anyone have any reservations about deleting this particular question around prioritization?
I just want to clarify here. So This is Sean with Energy Project. The what specifically are you proposing to delete?
This question, A and O, and then I guess it would be A and P. Questions about prioritization, not about eligibility.
Okay. So there would be all low income people being reported here, and then there's no further excuse me, any further questions asked about how very high, like extreme low income or very high energy burden or anything like that.
Yeah, no, there wouldn't be. It would be low income assistance program. Are there other eligibility requirements for the program? And that I have some questions here about certification and verification, which I'm not sure are helpful. That would be about it.
Yeah, because I'm just
It
thinking,
wouldn't-
some programs do have different benefit levels depending on income, and I mean that level of detail is not necessary for a report of this nature. It's kind of independent of the reporting, but okay, yeah, I just wanted to understand what was being requested here. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I'm kind of hung up on is that in the law or somewhere in the rules, somewhere, I can't remember where everything is, but it does say that, like that we should be giving some priority to this population. And so I kind of feel like
Mhm.
if there's a section for like, emerging practices or practices, so that it could be captured, I think that's important. But I understand what you're saying, quantifying all the differences amongst us is going to be a challenge for your reporting.
Mhm.
But I'm just kind of getting hung up on the significance of it. I feel like it's important,
Yeah,
and things
Yeah.
will be. Hopefully, we'll see some emerging practices from all of this.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it doesn't.
oh, sorry.
Oh, go for it, Sean. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that's, I'm like, just trying to think through this. I'm like, well, it doesn't seem like, wow, it seems like we do want to understand how we prioritize and serve customers, how best to go about that. It's like if we remove this, we don't have any specific qualities that we're asking about for that. So, I guess I'm agreeing with you, Anna, just in terms of are we really going to be missing something if we pull this out?
And I guess my response from our conversation right now would be that we're not going to be missing out on any, like the data is going to be it sounds like it's going to be too hard to tailor this question to get a response based on how utilities are currently running their programs. It's going to be, baked in the program design, and it's not necessarily clear how folks are going to prioritize folks. I think Tor had the geography example, but I'm not sure. It sounded like that's on its way, but not currently, something that Seattle is doing, and that we should save some time on our agenda over the course of this advisory group this summer and fall to talk about this in detail. And that's where we could capture some better data and more context for the conversation than asking questions here. That's my.
In terms of the
how I'm
timing for the survey,
understanding.
Austin, that context gathering and then maybe refining about kind of the prioritization issue, would that be an additional survey? Perhaps, or would that just be another more qualitative approach to gathering information about how utilities kind of consider themselves to be following this guidance on prioritization?
Yeah, good question, Mariel. I'm thinking that it would be more of a qualitative conversation, both as the advisory group and then as the broader stakeholder group. I think if we were interested in asking a question of, do you currently prioritize low-income customers with higher energy burden, yes or no. We could do that. That would seem relatively painless to ask, to fill out that question. But I think this group has seems to indicate that nobody's doing that at this moment.
So you just end up getting a bunch of not applicable responses or blanks.
Or no, which might be useful and indicative, but I think my understanding is that we're all gonna say that, or that the utilities are all at that point right now.
And from what I heard, I'm just trying to understand, are the utilities not, some utilities are moving towards that? So it's just about a matter of timing.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay,
But,
and that
I'll
that
let
wouldn't necessarily be useful information. Do you have something in the works? I totally understand why you want to move back from this, thinking that this might not actually capture anything this first round, but that it remains important to discuss further. Also, I have to go to another meeting.
Okay, thanks, Mariel, for joining today. Appreciate it. Questions? All right, so I'm going to move that, and I think I'm going to also cut this question about who certifies program eligibility and verifies. I think we've covered that in the other sections, unless folks think that we should do that. To be honest, I think certification and verification mean the same thing, but we'll check there. So let's go to zip code. So again, we're trying to collect the data in a way that can be aggregated and used for data analytics purposes, for visualizing it potentially. So we have that. We just got through. There's one part of that survey we didn't cover, which we'll come back to. But that's all program level information. So for the whole service territory. And then what we would like to do is be able to see things broken down at an aggregate level that kind of fits the maps, the non-utility maps that we so regularly use. I asked the utilities if they would be able to provide census tract level data, but that doesn't seem possible at this time for this survey. And because we have a condensed timeline, I don't really want to hold people up with trying to translate those zip codes to census tracts. Commerce will see what we can do to do that and help out. But for the survey itself, I'm thinking we'll just ask folks for zip code level data. And it's my understanding that folks can generally provide that, and that's what we're going to check right now. So at the zip code level, you're going to again provide your utility, your program name, and then a fuel type. And here I'm asking folks to break out their assistance by fuel type. And I want to kind of ask some of our dual fuel utilities, or folks that are providing propane or wood assistance to those customers. They're going to be able to break that out. And you don't need to say yes or no, but if you think you might need to ask somebody at your utility, let me know. We're not going to, finish. It's not, the survey doesn't end, the drafting portion doesn't end after this meeting, so you can ask your folks. But does anybody have a general sense about whether the utilities will be able to break this out by fuel type?
Well, I'll just throw it out here real quick. In terms of the program itself, I mean, this is only related to electricity. And so I thought the issue on fuel type was more around how are you calculating the over amount of energy assistance need that's in your service area. And so you wanted to be able to break out fuel types that were not electricity. So, and maybe I have that wrong here. But I just thought we were dealing with electricity here for the assistance programs.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I mean, I think that I like that recommendation in terms of just focusing on electricity. That makes sense under CETA. We did have folks reporting both fuel types last time, and so that's where this column kind of copied over from.
Yeah, Austin, I think the conversation we had with Sarah and, last year and previous iterations of this conversation was focused on the energy assistance need being addressed. And then obviously CETA is specific to electricity. However, energy assistance need is greater than just electricity. And so I think the idea here was, to the extent possible, and obviously for the investor-owned utilities, this is already being done, and for all but just a few of the consumer-owned utilities, it's going to be electric, but was to try to get as comprehensive of a picture of assistance programming as compared to need as possible in the state, because right now we have very disparate understanding and reporting across service territories. So I think that's at least the context for this. I think the reality is, we'll have some investor-owned utilities reporting information we're already getting, and then most all of the consumer utilities just reporting on electricity. How we approach energy assistance need and what the role of LIHEAP is, and that I think is, obviously I think a conversation that Commerce and the legislature is interested in. I don't think necessarily we're going to get everything we need from this one survey, but that's at least a context here.
Does that resonate with you, Steve, or any other hurdles if we left the column as is?
I mean, for us, we're looking at complete individual rows for each fuel type for a given program. I mean, we're just going to have one row for our utility. So I'm assuming, for those purposes, in most consumer and utilities, it makes it fairly simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I can provide some instructions to some clarity around that. So then the other questions here you're going to be, so again, this is all being reported by zip code. How much, assistance is the utility directly dispersing or spending to low income assistance programs? And then a question about how much it's passing to CAP agencies for giving out to low income households through energy assistance programs. And then there's a total column, which is just these two rows added together for that zip code and that program, right? So there's going to be a row for each program. And then if you're a investor-owned utility or offering more than electricity, you'd have a separate row for that program, for a particular program, to break it out by fuel type. And then there's a lot of text here that I think I could probably get rid of, but basically the utility, in addition to expenditures, I'm asking, because again, this is a requirement and it's something we asked in the last survey, which is, do you have, the number of households that are served? Actually, no, I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. I believe this section here is one where I'm asking about if like your program participation rate or saturation rate. Do you know how many total low-income households are in your service area? And then can you tell us how many households are eligible households are participating? And my understanding is that maybe a few utilities have this information, but that most don't. And so you just select no, and then you move on. Does that sound like a fair set of questions to have for zip code level data?
I'm thinking about these screaming and hair pulling that I'm going to get from my customer service folks when I show them this. That you want all this information broken down by zip code. They will shoot the messenger. I will assure you of this.
Well, we don't want that, but do you even have that? Do you think they would be even able to pull this data? Steve?
It's possible. We probably have to send it down to our OT folks. I break this all down. You know, we don't have that many zip codes, but I'm thinking about other service areas that have a lot of zip codes. This is a lot of data if you're asking for a response for each one, for each code.
Yeah, and Steve, this is Sean with Energy Project. It definitely is a lot of data, and this is, I mean, for example, what the investor and utilities have been providing with some of the low-income needs assessment reports that have been required by the commission. So this is, I don't want to say standard reporting, but this is for most of the investor and utilities analysis that has been produced and has been really beneficial, particularly looking at this last 2 years, looking at arrearages by zip code. And so looking at specific areas of high need in terms of either prioritizing or directing services where there's substantially higher disconnects and high energy need in those zip codes. So it is a lot of work, but it is something that is being collected and used.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my response is probably quite muted compared to what pushback you'll get from WPUTA and other agencies. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that.
Oh yeah, no surprise there. I mean, it's been, we've been a couple of years into this, so
yeah.
Yeah, so this is John in Tacoma. So I started playing around with this data and realized that means 63 separate entries for us, for the 63 zip codes in our service territory, which is obviously smaller than a whole county that some others may face. Are you looking for all this information in row 4 by zip code, or is it just the funds that are being dispersed by zip code? That is the important part, to get an idea of where it is, rather than trying to break down the number of households and all that other information, which is extremely time consuming to do. Is it more kind of just to identify where the assistance is going, rather than doing a demographic zip code review? So I'm just wondering if that's kind of what it is. If you're saying, Tacoma, how much money did you disperse in 3898375? I can quickly query that information, and I could put in and say, we did so much of this program, we did so much of that program, we did so much of that program. But then if you get us down into the demographics of the housing types and all those other information, then it suddenly becomes very daunting. So just, is it just the information for kind of a locator for a mapping purpose, or is it more in depth than that?
Yeah, so I hear a couple questions in there, John. And so the way it's set up right now, you would have a different line for each zip code that you have. So I think you said 63, so it'd be 63 lines, and that'd be 63 lines per program. So that could be a significant amount. Granted, I think the lines are, if you were able to print out the data without having to do any aggregation or pull it or anything, which of course you have to do, it wouldn't maybe be as bad if you just had to sit there and type in the numbers, but there's a lot more work to it than that. And I appreciate both Sean and Steve's comments here. And so this would be zip code level data, trying to figure out the saturation rate for those zip codes, or how much participation we're getting out of each of those. I am wondering if this, as well as the housing type data, which is next, really needs to be broken out by zip code this reporting period, and if it's better to revisit this when folks have more time to set up their data systems, because again, we have a data issue, or I mean, we have a time issue with getting the survey out and getting it back. And I'm thinking that what we really want is just the expenditures and this housing type information and household information, or participation rate. We can save that for later. And I'm not sure how useful it would be to say, oh, IOUs, you report all this information, and then those of you who don't have it, most of the COUs, you don't need to report this, and having kind of a fragmented data set. I'm not sure how useful that would be. And so what we would do in that scenario is we would move both the housing type questions, and if the participation stuff isn't out, participation stuff's already in the program. So we move the housing questions to the other sheet that we were just going over with the general program. And so folks would report that for their service area as a whole, rather than break it out by zip code. So I see a few hands up. Heather, you've had your hand up for a while. Why don't you go first?
Thank you, Austin. And this is Heather from UTC. This is just me missing the first half hour also. Sorry about that. I'm wondering if there was any conversation about whether there are certain questions that should only be answered by utilities of a certain size. I know you just mentioned, would it be useful if we just had IOU data? But yeah, was there any talk about that?
We didn't have that question. We had some folks raise, like, could some of the questions be optional? And my response was that I'd really like to make everything mandatory, because I don't want folks getting confused halfway through about what's optional and what's mandatory, but making sure that the mandatory questions that folks can't answer, or that would be difficult to answer, they can select no, and then move on to other questions. And so these questions, this participation rate question is one that I have. It's not in the statute. It's just something that I think the legislature would like to know. And if the answer is we could possibly get this information, IOUs have this information for their service areas, but we couldn't get it for the others on the timeline that we had, I'm fine saying that. But the housing type information we have to collect under the statute, and the question is whether we collect it for the entirety of the service area or by zip code. Sean, you have your hand next, right?
Oh, yep, thank you. So that was a good clarification I think you provided right there in terms of housing type for the total service territory versus housing type per zip code. My thought here is under H2, or maybe that's H3 actually, that getting the number of households served broken down by zip code is going to be really very helpful in terms of evaluating progress toward meeting energy assistance need. I think there's an easy out for utilities for I3, J3, like it's just, if you're not collecting, you just put no in there and move on. You know, the total number of households eligible versus total number of households served is I think an important number. We will be able to get the granularity from answering H3 in terms of where services are going. And then we can compare that against other sources of data about, you know, whether it's the Washington, the WTN, the Washington Tracking Network, or the, you know, the highly impacted map. So, you know, we don't necessarily need the utilities to know uh, the eligibility in zip codes, but we do need to know where the services are going.
Mhm.
So to summarize, I think H3 is important, and then I3, J3, K3 are all easy knows. And then providing that households, the types of households is going to be important, but less important per zip code. I think that's going to be probably a difficult lift, at least the first round of reporting. So just a few thoughts there.
And Steve, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, and Sean addressed quite a bit of my concerns there. And under H3, again, we should be able to fairly easily get the number of households that are served by our programs overall, and break that down by zip code in terms of the amount of assistance distributed. So I don't think that's going to be too difficult. I think there will be some utilities that may struggle a little bit, but for the most part, I think H3 is doable if you're just talking about the overall amount of assistance. I'm thinking about the information that's needed. We're really trying to find out how much assistance is delivered by zip code, and then hopefully that can get translated over to census tracts, which then can be compared fairly easily with LEAD. And that'll help us figure out this gap between who's eligible and who's already being served.
And you feel comfortable, Steve, and the utilities with leaving I through K in here. And if you just don't know, you just click no, and then you don't have to fill those out.
Yeah. I mean, I feel comfortable with that. I guess want to make it clear to utilities that if you don't have this data, this is we're not looking for you to break down every single program by zip code. Just making that clear to folks. But again, it shouldn't be too difficult, in my estimation, to determine H3. And in terms of determining H3 and the total amount of assistance being provided.
And how do our IOUs feel about, sorry about this, I'm just gonna say, about this I through K and having that information reported by zip code versus just having it over?
Could you repeat your question, Austin? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So as this is structured right now, basically, if you were able to determine your participation rate by zip code, I would have folks report that. If you know how many eligible people are in your zip code, and then if you know that, how you provide your participation rate.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of work? Would you even be able to do that at this point?
Yeah, we don't know. I don't have the eligible numbers by zip code.
Okay.
And then I was just thankful on J and K that you started with if the.
Okay, so I feel like these are useful questions to ask, even if people just say no, because then we know that we don't have that information, and the legislature can know we don't have that information, and we ask the question, right? And I think it's a rather straightforward one. And so the question for me would be to go back and make sure that we have a question about participation rate in the program overall. And if folks have that, then they can provide it. And I'm guessing a lot of our consumer-owned utilities will not have any of that information, and that's fine for this, survey. So then what I heard from listening to Sean and everybody from this conversation is this whole housing type and households by housing status. It'd be better if these were located. Again, these are, if they start with, if you have this information, can you provide it? And rather than asking that by zip code, we might as well ask it at the program level to get an idea of what information folks are collecting. And we don't need folks to break it out by zip code. There's not too much utility at this point in asking folks to do that. The likelihood of asking it in this section is that people say, no, they can't provide it by zip code and we get no data versus asking it for the service area overall. Does that sound right to folks?
Yes. I would agree, Austin. Doing it by the service territory is reasonable and realistic. Zip code, no.
Okay. Let's do that then. So it's 11:25 now. I hope to take the next 20 minutes to wrap up the few places we haven't talked about in the survey yet, and then move to some other questions. Some general questions overall. So this one here, this last tab, is the part of the conservation calculator that we asked in the section 4B or section 4 survey, the one that was reported in February, for folks to report their different measures, calculate, at the end, their annual bill savings, their lifetime bill savings. And that data came in really messy. It was supposed to be a copy and paste exercise from an Excel document, but we had people adding different columns in, changing things. It was just really a messy data set. And it also looked like it was a ton of work. Even if you had all the information available to just put it in to the calculator, it looked like people took a lot of time for that. And my question is, can we just ask you for your annual bill savings and the lifetime bill savings for your energy efficiency programs overall? And then is there a standard place utilities are already submitting this information or gathering this information? So, in the instructions, we could say as reported to BPA, or as the BPA gives, reports to us, or as we report in our EIA conservation reports. That's my set of questions. Can we report this at an aggregate level for the utility overall, their annual bill savings and lifetime savings of their energy efficiency programs? And then the second question is there any additional guidance we should give the utilities when providing this information so that we receive as standardized information as possible?
Austin, this is Sean. I heard you say lifetime savings for all energy efficiency. Now we were just interested in those at or below 80% of AMI or 200% of federal poverty level here. So I just want to clarify, we're not looking for all, we're looking for that very specific subset of data.
Yeah, that's great clarification, Sean. Yeah, we're looking for, and I guess the way I was saying it would be all low income energy efficiency programs, all the programs that are going to the low income households. Yes, that is correct.
So Austin,
and this is one.
Whoops, I was shoot from the hip here a little bit, Austin. Some of this information is obviously tied to BPA, to the relative measures and REFNO numbers, and I've already talked to you once about, and Sarah once about this, that if you took insulation and broke it down by REFNO numbers, you'd have 47 different lists, based on whatever what the existing insulation level was prior and what it would go to. So the calculator that was supplied allowed me to add all the information up and able to put together that summary information. So having the calculator and allowing us to pull it together as best as possible by measure and useful life and that other information, and tying it with our KWH was really, it worked. It was not difficult. It's just breaking it down by the actual BPA reference number. Now, BPA is going through a whole new reporting system. They're going to call it BEATS. And it is, who knows how it'll all look at this point, but it's not scheduled to go online until probably the end of this year. So we're not quite sure what it's going to look like and what information and all that. But if you needed that annual bill savings and lifetime, having the calculator that was provided was a real quick, easy way for us to, for me at least, to fill in the blanks there.
That's good to know, John. Thank you. Do other folks kind of agree with that the calculator would be helpful? And so what we would change with this sheet is just put the whole calculator here. And then my follow-up question is for John and in the group is, if I remove the column with BPA reference number, is that helpful, or does that make things more confusing?
As long as you don't mind the word various BPA reference numbers in there.
I'm not as familiar with how all that's calculated, but folks in our conservation department, didn't have any trouble, putting this together. I didn't hear any complaints from them. Again, I don't know how this would apply to, smaller utilities that may have, very, very small conservation programs. And I just don't know, but it was not an issue for us to gather that information.
Most coast conservation program managers have all this information available.
Okay.
All right, so it sounds like we'll put in the original calculator here and have folks do their calculations for 2021. And the key here will be kind of just locking down that calculator so that folks can't go in and add columns and change things, because that was a problem. All right. So the other ones are pretty straightforward. The last ones I want to return to, this is that program sheet. And these are a set of questions that are totally, Commerce is asking about related issues to low-income assistance programs. It's not requirements. And when we're going to ask for these questions, just like some of those other ones that we've talked about, answering no to the question is a response, and it's not saying no doesn't mean you're not compliant with the statute. These questions are simply to better understand the capacity of the utility to identify low-income households and as part of their programs. So that's what's intended here, and that's how I'm going to try to explain it with better language, of course. So outcomes and performance metrics is the title of this section. We'll walk through some of the questions here and then I gather people's thoughts. Do you track the number of eligible households for this program? Yes, no. If you do, how do you do so? What percent are enrolled in the program if you track? Does the utility currently, here we get to that, prioritize high energy burden households in this program? If so, how does the utility do it? Is the utility currently capable of identifying high energy burden households in this program? If not, what are the primary barriers to doing so? I've listed a few here: lack of data, lack of staff time, lack of staff expertise. Does the utility use advanced data analytics to track performance of the program? If so, what analytic tools do they use? And then just a general question about how does the utility track the performance of this program? Again, this is kind of getting at questions around the capacity of the utility to do some of the things that I think statute is trying to get at, such as, knowing the eligible households. And also kind of, we see that some of the utilities are developing robust tools and trying to understand which ones are doing so. And there will be a story there about the capacity to make those tools available and track performance of programs. That's kind of the origin of this section. And I'm wondering if you guys have some general or specific feedback on it. If this is something that you would advise that we include in the survey or not.
I've had a lot of talk or discussion with our customer service department and general manager about, how do we obtain better data? And, what I'm getting back from them is, does the state already have access to data sets among various departments, whether it's, commerce receiving information from, LIHEAP, and poverty data per household through perhaps DSHS, or does the Department of Licensing have specific information? Is there a way for the state to provide this data rather than utilities doing this on a piecemeal basis?
Yeah, and I think, Steve, if I'm understanding you correctly, the way I'm thinking about is this survey data kind of tees up that conversation, right? About how do we get this data? These questions are just asking, do we kind of have it, and who has it and who doesn't have it? And that's it. It's a kind of just an evaluative question. It's not trying to find a solution or say, hey, who does and does not, point people out. It's just to figure out what the capacity is right now at the utility level.
Are there any utilities on this call that have access to that data or have a methodology that they'd be able to share?
Well, this is Teresa from Puget. We do. I'm not the expert in this, but we do purchase third-party data annually. We've done it for quite a while. And during COVID, we have used it to estimate the number of eligible households. That's what we use to actually distribute our final round of COVID assistance. So for PSE, we do have it. I'm not sure about the prioritizing the high energy burden in there, but I do know we identify both known and estimated low-income households. And census block data is included in that as well.
That's the same for us. We engaged with a third-party vendor to conduct the analysis for us to let us know how many customers we had that were eligible for our programs.
So Tacoma
And then
doesn't have that data other than using census tract data that's already being supplied. So I don't think, and I'm just going a little bit off the top of my head as I look at this question. Other than census data, we would not have this information at this time.
And even from the third party data, I mean, you're getting down to the household level, you're getting to that customer level.
We are at Puget. Yeah, we have a customer insights team that we have data scientists that actually do this in-house with when we bring in the third-party data. So it does do it by household. The one thing that's, and this was from another part of the survey here, is household size is an average using census block data. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to say it's a 0 to 2 person versus a 3 to 5 person. It's an average for that area.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Anna at Avista, we don't get down to the individual household. It's more by county.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, thank you for the distinctions there.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in, because again, we use this was the first time we've ever done it to where we actually used it to give out assistance during COVID. There is an inaccuracy to the data, right? There's going to be some people that aren't low income and some that are missed. And so we also track that accuracy. That wouldn't come out necessarily in this particular type of survey, but I think it's important that everybody understands it. Even when you're doing it by county, it's just not perfect.
And so I'm thinking from our conversation that this might be a worthwhile set of questions just to figure out and start the conversation. I'm interested in having folks talk a little bit more about the different tools they're using. We don't have Hassan on today, but like I know Avista's tool is different, from what Hassan has developed for other utilities, and sounds like PSE, they have a different tool and different set of methodologies that might be useful for us to all talk about. And then there's a question about our smaller utilities and the resources they have at their disposal.
So this is Josh and Chelan, and we hired Hassan to do this work, and it allowed us to get data pretty close, similar to what PSC struggles with. It's not exactly accurate, but we would have to hire a consultant every time to get this data though. So it's good for the previous years, but every couple of years it just doesn't make sense to hire somebody to do this. And that's what most small utilities would have to do.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. So I'm thinking about keeping these, and then let's moving on to the last set of questions, which I think we'll be able to knock out real quick. And if folks have other thoughts or want to message me afterward, let me know. Again, I'm not, firming this. I'm going to work on making our changes we have today, but I'm going to be working over the next week or so to finish this up. So there's still time to send in feedback if you have thoughts later. So finally, I noticed across the different groups that met last time that there was a real interest in being able to split utilities up into different categories by size. But size can be a lot of different things. So I wanted to provide some questions that got at size and capacity of the utility. And I'll roll through these and see if anybody has any questions or concerns or thinks that some of them are unhelpful. So we have the total number of residential households served by the utility, and then we break that down to electric households served. Again, I think just by size, some utilities will, having multiple services offered and being bigger and getting more revenue, that they will be more resourced than some of the others. So I wanted to get both of these metrics and you see that here for total revenue, and then residential electricity retail revenue. I should probably reword that, but service territory, number of employees, and then a series of questions about the number of employees that manage or administer. I could probably just go with the word administer energy assistance programs. And so that includes full-time and then part-time employees as well. Then this is the number of full-time employees that work on energy assistance programs. I should reword that. The way I said it, this is the number of staff that administer energy assistance programs full-time. And then I have those same questions, but for outreach for programs. How many people do you have working on it full-time? How many people work on it overall? And then I have a question about just what the retail customer rate was in 2021. And aside from the staffing questions, I think Most of this you could get through EIA 861 forms, but we are looking at 2021, and that form hasn't been put out yet. So I thought I would just collect it here and have utilities report it. Are any of these metrics things that seem overly difficult to collect or unnecessary, or that you would advise that I reword or provide greater clarification?
Just to, and I'm sorry if this is silly, I just want to make sure I understand, because we are a dual fuel utility. So I'm assuming for column B, you would want all of our residential households, whether they're gas, electric, or both. And then in column C, those that are just electric only. Is that what this is distilling down to?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because that is totally doable. Yeah.
I'm making a note for myself, and I'll do that for all of these here. So the only other sheet that we haven't looked at is the contact info, which is boring. And then I have the RCW, and I'll flesh this out more in the final draft. I'll also try and provide some guiding instructions at the top, but I wanted to see how much of this was self-evident just from the columns themselves today. And I think we had some really good discussions about these, and I will incorporate the changes folks have suggested, which I hope will lighten the load for folks. If they have drop downs, if we move some of the zip code data over to program data, and a lot of these become yes, no questions, and then a few numbers. You know, the onerous part here will be, a potentially onerous part will be just having to break out your programs by zip code and provide those expenditures. But I really think this is very valuable information to be able to show it. Show the aggregation by zip code on a map will be powerful. Because right now, with the data that we collected last time, we can't aggregate any of it by zip code. You don't even know how much money a utility is spending in a particular zip code unless they're only serving one zip code. And I don't think anybody is doing that. So we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks for getting in the weeds. I'm open to general questions that folks might have. And then the general question that I have for the utilities is, you know, making the adjustments we have today, what is a kind of a reasonable timeline? Or what would be the shortest timeline that you could turn this around by? And then a question about what would be a reasonable timeline.
I guess oh, sorry, Austin, go ahead.
No, go for it. I'm thinking we're going to publish this at the end of the month. That would be when we would get this out to folks.
Okay, that was one question. And then, so the other one for me, because I'm just representing a portion of this for PSE, is that would we be able to get a draft to have an internal meeting and then come back with our estimated timeline? Because I do need our customer insights group to weigh in on if we're going for zip code data, how long that will take them.
Okay. That seems reasonable to me. I could make some of the tweaks and send you, even a draft, maybe not today, but tomorrow or this week. And then maybe you could provide a time, talk with your team the next week and give me a time back before the end of the month.
Yeah, But for sure, and I don't know, I mean, we've done a lot of this before. It's, as you know, Puget has a lot of zip codes. So when we start talking about zip code data, I just want to make sure that they're equipped, that's all. But I know we have it.
Thanks, Heather. Any other just general sense of how long this might take, folks? You know, we get it out. Is it, you know, obviously on our end, we would have liked to have put it out and got it back yesterday. But, you know, for what I'm hoping we can have is something by middle to end of August. So that's June, July. That'll be over 2 months.
How long
That
does it take
seems-
you to compile everything, Austin?
Well, you know, like that Section 4B data took forever, took months to copy and paste, it seemed. Maybe I'm blurring that data with the CEIP data that I copy and pasted as well. And I did it each line, you know, each different box by box. And so it was really a hassle. This, I'm going to build a hidden sheet underneath, and it's going to collect all of it. And then I just have to copy and paste a few lines from each utility into a master document. From that master document, if everything's locked down tight and people can't add weird characters to things they don't need to, you know, we'll need to do a little bit of analysis of the narrative sections, but generally it's going to be just number crunching, and I can load that into some software, clean it, and what needs to be cleaned, and we're good to go. So I'm planning on a month for cleaning the data, but I'm hoping it's more like a couple of days, if not a week or two. And maybe that requires some long hours, but that's okay. The hope would be that if we got it in August, we could process it, and by September, middle of September, we could all be looking at the data itself. Meanwhile, we'll be talking about the policy options, et cetera, with the data that we have, with the understanding that we have. And my assumption is that this data will make those things clearer and not take us in a whole new direction when we compile it all. Because I think this group and then the other stakeholders have a fairly good sense of what's going on in Washington, kind of just doing this number crunching for the legislature to help them understand the problem in quantitative terms, which I think are easier to grasp right off the bat than having a history with this information. Does that sound good or right to folks? We got thumbs up from Steve, so that's good. And Tor. All right, thanks, Sean, for all your help today. Really appreciate it. The last few things for folks, and I'm going to send around another email, probably with the cleaned up version of this Excel file. But I included it in the meeting invite today. Is please give me your meeting times, your available times over the next month, so we can put a few more meetings on the books. We'll be diving into the data that we have available to us. It kind of feels weird to do that after the survey, but it's important that we get this out first. And then we will, I'm thinking we might take a little detour and explore the maps and the data gathering that folks are doing, because as we had talked about today, there's some interesting stuff going on that helps us understand our capacity to understand energy assistance in the state. And then we will need to talk about how we want to tackle the policy recommendations or policy evaluation portion of Section 6. So those are the topics that come to mind for the next few meetings. If folks have questions, let me know. I'll let you all know when we finalize the Excel document. I'll send the draft, of course, but then I'll also let you know when we finalize it and when we plan to have a webinar for folks to know that it's available for them to complete. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I know it seemed tedious to go through some of this, but it was really helpful. And I think people are going to be really appreciative that the form kind of guides them through answers and that they're not dragged down rabbit holes that they don't need to go. So thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.
Great, thanks. Thanks,
Awesome.
Austin. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Austin.
Austin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.